there's an interview, a post interview after the show of a woman who says, with these
of your show,
of my show, and she said, watching these women, these heroines, awakens the heroine in me, and she was just in tears.
And how has that awakened the heroine in Sandy Brown?
The resilience to know, just like my cousin would say, you can't expect to go through something. You can't expect to bring these women forth without going through some stuff yourself.
Hey, Common Sensor, if you're looking for acting tips, industry insights, interviews, or life lessons, you have come to the right place. Today, I am just elated to get to introduce to you one of my dearest, bestest friends in the whole wide world. She is an award-winning actress, a comedian, a writer, producer, solo performer, singer, and sketch performer who unleashes entertainment that tickles the mind. She is one of the funniest people I know and has been referred to many times as the Black Carol Burnett. Please help me welcome Miss Sandy Brown. Yay!
High five.
Sandy Brown.
Hello.
So,
I'm
first
at
of
the
all,
table.
you're at the
I'm
table. That's right. You're at the table,
I like
girl.
it. I like it.
So, I want to talk to you
Yes.
about your one-person show, Oh Yes, She Did.
Oh, yes, she did.
Now, give me the whole title.
Oh, yes, she did.
Oh, that's it?
No, the main title is Oh, Yes, She Did, From Slave Ship to Spaceship, actually.
Okay, from slave ship to spaceship.
Yes.
All right, very good. Now, what inspired you to come up with this piece?
I had a different one-person show originally, and it was a futuristic show regarding the apocalypse and everything that's going on in the world. And I was asked to present a show for Black History Month. And I said, okay, I'll pull that together. And after studying one-person shows with Adela Barnes, as well as a few others, I said, this is a great thing that we've learned to do for Black History Month. When I went to study for each of them and I did the show, I did it the first time, and it was so overwhelming because for me, it wasn't just to put on the outfit and speak about the person. It was to embody that specific pivotal moment in their life that made a change, the sociological change that they made. And so to understand that, and my show spans 400 years of history, so I have literally from slave ship to spaceship, and so each person embodies a specific time and space, and so you can't just play them all and expect there not to be layers. They overlap on one another, and one stands on the shoulders of each. So I needed to learn all about this time and period, the pre-slavery as well as slavery, the 1600s, all the way through to modern times, because you can't understand one period in history without understanding what fed into it and what happened afterwards. I mean, it informs all of that. So the more that you can't just throw that together. And I learned that when I did the first one, and it was so odd because the physicality of it and the costumes, because I wanted to literally give you the full dressings of each. Because some people do the solo show historical,
Right.
and they'll do an idea of the character, a scarf.
Right.
Or a hat. For easy change, that's fine. But to me, I feel like you learn a lot about somebody by their clothing. We know a lot about each other now from, the different clothing styles. Now you can clock something and understand why something is so. And so you carry yourself, and I think I mentioned this before to you, you carry yourself different whether you're wearing a corset or a dashiki. Do you know what I mean? And so that informs about the time too, and what the people are going through. And so it was very important to me that it was full dress, and the hand props and everything like that were important to me as well. And so I did an initial performance of it. And what was interesting is that I wasn't familiar with the idea of having to change clothes for each of them. So I hadn't adapted the quick change method in terms of Velcro and, different things like that. So I'm literally in there doing the full dressing, and I'm sure the audience was like, where did Sandy Brown left a billion? Something like that. And then I finally, when I got home the night after the show, and they loved the show, and it was so fulfilling to do it. When I got home, I slept for 24 hours. The energy of it, and also, but I also knew
the outpouring of
energy to create it, and also when I got back, and there was just literally, for lack of a better word, whoever received this or not, there was a spirit that said, "Rest, my child." You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it hit over me, and I literally looked at the clock, and it was 24 hours later. I've never slept that long in my life. And after I did the show, I said, to continue to do this, I have to go deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I went deep into the woodshed, and deep woodshed study of each and every one of them, and the histories surrounding them. That's why it's such detailed with the costumes and things like that, because it informs that their way in the world. And I started doing it when I did it full out the first time, and it was my sister who helped me name it, because I said, "Oh yes, she did," "Oh yes she did." She was like, "No, keep it tight." She and a crew of people helped me do it for the first time at the Barbara Morrison Theater in Leimert Park, and
this was after you did it the first time.
After I did it for the college, and then when I did a performance there were more people on crew than were in the audience, and it was an exhausting turn, and I said, do I want to do this? And it spoke to me again. No, you do want to do this.
What made you want to go all the way? Because you're covering 400 years.
I'm covering 400 years, and some of the women are so well known that they bring out every year in honor, in celebration of Black History Month, and others weren't so well known. And I had felt that I had done a level of study in my life and education that I should know these people, and I was affected by the fact that I didn't, and I said, well, then I just stepped into that. I stepped into that void and said, well, then I will present those so that other people know. And in fact, so
let's talk about who's on it, because you actually have two shows that you've broken up of these women. But on the first show, who are the stars of the first show?
Yes, we have Phillis Wheatley, we have Harriet Tubman, we have Madam C.J. Walker, we have Josephine Baker, we have Billie Holiday, we have Rosa Parks, we have Angela Davis, and we have Shirley Chisholm. Now, what's interesting is I did all the graphics and ideas for it, and the idea of it was to have the iconic banana skirt of Josephine Baker as international spy and performer in the center, along with all of the other women.
So tell us who Josephine Baker is.
Josephine Baker was a entertainer, film star, actress, dancer from vaudeville days on up to the talkies, and she was also a spy. And
well,
so she was a spy.
She also left the country, America.
She left America
and became a citizen of France.
Yes. There were a lot of issues for Black Americans at the time, and a lot of performers had the option to go overseas. And she said, I will definitely do that. And what happened is the evolution of her life. She was confronted by Goebbels, and who was part of the Nazi Party, and people would write about her. And she was bold, and she was outspoken, and she would speak up about it. And she would also hide people for safety in her home. You go to my castle in Milan, you will find shelter there. And so she's such a powerful figure to me from the quintessential rags to riches story where I will not accept you not letting me in this door. I will bust open a door somewhere else. And that's so beautiful to me and so vivacious of her. And she desegregated so many things. I do a sequence of her in Vegas. And so she was a huge part of the movement. Now I have her
the civil rights
movement. Now I have her in the center, and you guys will get an image of that. I have her in the center, and I have all of the other women around her. What's interesting is each woman. I recreated their iconic
look.
Yeah, iconic imagery that we have of them. And when I did that, I remember one of the first theaters that I had it at, Theater on Pico in Los Angeles. I had it as a giant 6x9 poster. Banner, rather. And I mention that because this woman and her children were walking by, and the owner-director there, Jeff Murray, a great actor and director in his own right, he said, because he had literally just put it up and was checking the level of it to see the size, the angle of it. And this woman and her children came by and walked by it. And they walked by it, and the woman did a double take. And then she stepped back, and she started pointing to each of the women and explaining it to the two children. And that moved me, because I said, before they even see the show, it's teaching people. And so I feel like it's outside of me. The way in which I've presented this is on a different level than I've ever experienced it. And the response has been amazing and uplifting and spiritual, and people get a feeling from it, very much like a gospel play without it being overtly a gospel production. But there's a spiritual feeling that people have, and it doesn't matter. It's not just quote unquote for people of color, for African Americans or women.
History.
Right. It's beyond that. It also speaks of an underdog situation and surviving and thriving and overcoming that people respond to. And can I share a little side story regarding the banner? Okay, so as artists, and often with theater, we're very limited on budget, and so that's how you're often able to be so creative, because you don't have the budget to do things on a main level. That was my publicity. That big 9-foot poster that people drive by on the street, that was my publicity push. And one day, came to the theater, and the banner was gone.
What?
The banner was gone. I was like, oh, what? It had disappeared, and no one knew what happened. And went over to it, and I was devastated. I looked over at it, and it wasn't like it was just ripped off, because I looked in trash cans. I was like, did somebody just vandalize it? We looked, and when we looked at the rivets on which it was put on, someone had carefully cut around the rivets, and I'm like, somebody's sitting at home with the beer going, oh yes, she did. Oh yes, she had tried to. I was like, what? Someone stole my banner. I was like, it was a fine blend of flattery and also creepiness. It's like somebody, what?
I'm pissed off.
And I was like, that's not my promotion. Yeah. So that did enough, but there were so many things that had happened along the way in the production and lifting this to bring the show to fruition, that my cousin told me something. My cousin, Charles Holman, who was an actor in his own right, may he rest in peace, it was so supportive of this. And he said to me, Sandy, you can't expect to play women who've gone through so much without being in a pool of things that you need to overcome to bring them forth. And I was like, oh, you got me there, and to do them honor. So there's a lot that I've learned along the journey. Even when I was writing it, I didn't know. At first I was thinking, I'm getting the details of it, but I wanted to get the humanity of it beyond just the legend of it, but the human response and what they were feeling, and that everyone can relate to. And that's what's universal, is that when people see it and the reactions, and you'll see some of those, it's that they realize that it's not that these were just superhuman people, superheroes, doing whatever. It was the average person their situation where it came to a point where they could make a decision to make change, be the change, or influence the change.
They didn't
or
wait.
turn around, and
They
they
did
stepped
not
up,
wait
and that's what
for
you see.
change.
That's what you see in the show at that moment, and people, it speaks to them. That's what they relay back to me. There are people that have seen the show that are saying, I feel deprived. I didn't learn this in school. And there's people that come and see it over and over again, and that blows my mind too. There were some people who that theater is right near Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. They brought a chicken dinner up there on the upper rafters, and they were sitting there. And it was like they turned into dinner theater, and they were like, "This is my thing. This is my," And I'm like, so that tickled me.
Doing it in Los Angeles,
yes,
and then taking it up to the Bay Area to do it.
I have.
What was the difference of the audience? Because I would assume that there is such a different audience in the Bay Area.
Well, I went to school in the Bay Area at UC Berkeley, and that, I will just say, just to be honest, it's a more literate community. I mean, they're more tapped in. It's the, foundation of the Black Panthers and all these different organizations, so they're more aware, and they're more tapped in than they are out here. So there's a richness to their appreciation too, and to get history teachers that are like, you bringing stuff in that I didn't even know. You know what I mean? So that moves me to the respect for the craft in terms of the writing. This is the thing also with this project, that it allowed me to step forward, and it's okay. I know I'm jumping into a lot of different things. There's a lot that goes into it. But this particular project came at a time when things had gotten slow for me as an actress. And I think that a lot of the onset of reality TV has affected a lot of us seasoned actresses that have lots of credits and things like that. This show allowed me to write, direct, produce, and characters that I may have never likely been cast in. During the time that I ran this show, over 200 performances, over 7,000 people have seen the show. During that time of doing that, I don't think I've ever felt more creatively fulfilled. As fun and wonderful as film and TV, stand-up, all of that, being able to create this every night and take that audience on that long journey of something, it was so rich because each of the women tap into a different aspect of you, and not just as an artist.
Let me jump in here, because I think what the audience has to know is, first of all, you have been doing sketches for a bazillion years.
Yeah.
Between sketches and stand-up, and so you already had a sense of character. Because in your comedy, you do a lot of characters.
Yeah.
You bring them into the party. So that this was an extension of something you were already doing. I mean, you were already writing. You were already creating characters. But now you went into another zone.
Yeah, I had taken it to another level. And I'm known for my comedy. I'll get people that may not know my name, but they know my work, and they're like, "You're that girl. What's that show that you're on that show? What's that show that you play that crazy woman on and the neurotic one?" I'm like, all of that, because that's what I've been, kind of typecast as. And when you do this, you get to work all of these other muscles. When you had mentioned Phillis Wheatley, who is an iconic writer, pioneer of African American literature. When I wanted to get such authenticity with the characters that I know her background. She's from Senegal, Gambia, and brought here on a slave ship. And I would want the specificity that we would learn in Larry Moss's class. Larry Moss is an acting teacher here in Los Angeles, extraordinaire. And whenever somebody I knew was going to Africa, or a friend of mine, I would say, if you're going to Mali or Senegal, Gambia, just bring me back a pebble so I can sew that into the dress. Something from
her home.
Something that is hers, that is of her. That when I walk out there. And what's interesting is over this time, I've found out I've done the DNA,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things. And with all of the surprises that showed up in that, I can be easily offended by just almost anything, which I love. I love that I can tap in and that I'm kind of related to everybody everywhere. So, but with that, I found out that I have that from her region, and that just moved me in such a way, in terms of it awakens you, and we're talking, let's say we're talking a little bit more about the craft itself. When we have studied under Larry Moss in his book Intent to Live, he would say in class, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I was like, that's not true. And I'm like, oh, it is, And I'm learning with this show completion of creativity and going deeper. And it forced me to dust off all of my aspects of my creativity into this one thing to bring it forth. And it has blessed me. It continues to bless me and others. And
So
it's the definition of a
let me ask
caption
you,
piece.
as an African American woman
Mm-hmm.
who is hypersensitive,
Yes.
but once you started digging into these women of history and really finding out more about them, how has that affected you in how you look at stuff now?
I even more so than hypersensitive, hyper aware is probably what I'd say, and I understand how I'm able to stand where I stand, and stand in honor of that, and to remind others of that. I'm able to be aware of what's happening today. In many cases, is a result of something that happened several hundred years ago, and you can see the evolution of that we're still dealing with, that we're still trying to. One of the characters in Volume 1, I won't say character, but legend of Volume 1 is Angela Davis. And when I'm on the megaphone with her at her rallies, and she goes, and speaking in terms of
And Angela Davis is who?
Is an iconic professor and civil rights leader. She and women's study pioneer and prison study pioneer. Speaking with her through the megaphone and the audience, and one of the things is that I'm taking you into a 60s rally as Angela Davis, and saying, that women should be paid the same as men, and you can hear the audience still roar, because we're still dealing with that today. And even speaking about how we arrived at that point, with the history that's behind that. And so I'm aware of the connective tissue on stuff, and it informs my writing and performance, and a raised eyebrow on stuff that I feel like I'm aware of stuff that someone may not but needs to know. And it's an honor, and that is my artistic challenge, is to be able to present things in a way that tickle the mind and uplift the soul.
So in let's talk Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah.
Shirley Chisholm and Senator Harris.
Yeah.
Because the first woman who ran for president was Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah.
And then 40 years later, we had a black woman running for president.
Yeah.
Once
again, that's the connective tissue that you see, and the echoes of that. In fact, when Shirley Chisholm ran for president, and she is someone that I didn't know until I was researching the other women. When I was doing the in-depth study, I was like, wait a second, and I'm like, I got to put her in. And
Shirley Chisholm was a badass.
And people started having T-shirts of her that would say, Shirley Chisholm made Obama as well as Hillary Clinton possible. Their runs, So, and I remember in one of the interviews that she has, she goes, essentially that they may laugh when they see me run, because people are like, you're not going to win, Shirley. Wait. She goes, oh, they may laugh now, but they won't laugh the next time if there's a woman or a person of color running, because they can see that it can be done. And it's so powerful that she stood there knowing that, with the slings and arrows that were coming at her, and she just stood her ground, and with a knowing my place in history right here, right now. That, and and so it gives me chills. These women give me chills. Y'all get me emotional in the studio clubhouse. But yeah, and there's an interview, a post interview after the show, of a woman who says, with these
of your show,
of my show, and she said, watching these women, these heroines, awakens the heroine in me. And she was just in tears.
How has that awakened the heroine in Sandy Brown?
The resilience to know, just like my cousin would say, you can't expect to go through something. You can't expect to bring these women forth without going through some stuff yourself. And so, because our industry can give us it can treat us like a ping pong ball, and to understand my journey is not the same as anyone else's, and to recognize my lane and to recognize my place as a creative, and the value of that. And it excites me. It excites me to know the shoulders I stand upon. It's may I be worthy.
You are worthy.
May I do work that honors all that's come before me.
Yes, and you do that.
Thank you.